Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Nationalism. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are great. So I came across this video. I mean, like, it's been a whole lot going on. Some people saying FBA, okay, like it's more like FBA, African American, black people. So this woman was like, why is it that, black people are calling FBA cult? And I am saying, which one is black people calling FBA cult? Right? Because I am looking at her, I see a brown skinned woman that could identify as a black person. So who are the black people? Because FBAs are also black, right? You are brown skin. So why all this going back and forth? Nobody is calling anybody cold. And I don't understand this idea of I am African American, I am not this, I am FBA, I am not this. See, we cannot be coming at one another at this point in time because what we should have is just one common goal. What do I mean by one common goal? One common goal to make sure that we fight or you fight against what is fighting you. Because at this point in time, it looks like you all are deviating from fighting the oppressor to looking for a way to bring one another into the discussion that is trying to separate yourself from this person and separate yourself from the other person. No, it is not making sense for me. It is not making sense. Let's get into this.
Weird to see black people calling FBA a cult. Why are y'all calling foundational black Americans a cult? Like, I don't get it. I don't call myself that necessarily, but I am one. If you were born in America, if your family has a long lineage here, then you are a foundational black American. But I'm just trying to understand, why is everyone upset that we are fighting back against ethnic erasure? Everybody else is allowed to take pride in who they are and where they come from, except for us. Like, I'm watching videos. Y'all know I be scrolling, shit. I be on these TikTok streets, and I keep seeing black American people. They call them African Americans. Oh, I'm African American. Like, one guy literally said, being a FBA is of the devil. So it's demonic now to be a foundational black American and to call yourself that. Like, what the hell? I keep asking you motherfuckers, how many generations does it take for you to be a part of a fucking region? How much blood needs to be shed on the land for you to be a part of the soil? Every person with melanin in America did not come here shackled on a fucking boat, smushed together like sardines. Millions of people would not survive that voyage in 2025. Use logic. Just because you don't agree with something does not mean that it's evil, demonic, or occult. Like, y'all make it seem like people that consider themselves FBA is out here posing imminent threats or causing harm to people. That's not what's happening. And I know people consider me that. People, like, I've had somebody say that I was a pretendian and all types of shit. Y'all ain't never hear me come up here and say I'm FBA, although technically I guess you could say that that's how I identify. Y'all have never heard me get up here and say I was Indian. I just say my family been here. You all are continuously labeling people for taking up for themselves. Why the fuck? Like, could y'all answer? Is FBA a cult? And why are people saying this, especially black Americans? It's fucking bizarre. Spread is the Brooklyn way.
They are reclassifying us right in our faces, and you guys are conforming to it instantly, because all I keep hearing now is foundational black Americans, foundational black Americans. If you don't understand that that is a reclassification, and pretty soon you're going to start seeing it on papers, FBA, foundational black American baby. You are reclassifying yourself. They don't have to do much because you are reclassifying yourself as an indigenous American when they reclassified you as freedman, mulatto, Indian, black, Negro, colored, African American, and now here you are playing into this thing of the foundational black American. I can't believe this shit. Like, and it ain't even on paper yet. And y'all are reclassifying us. Like, are you... What the helly on?
You just engagement farming. Man, I was already turning crops over on this old content farm before I ever mentioned something about y'all. You feel me? But they're gonna piss me off on Twitter. I'm talking about I'm ready to illustrate the reason why I'm a Hall of Fame college policy debater. I'm trying to have set speech times too. I don't want no yelling over nobody. When you talking, I ain't gonna speak over you, I ain't gonna speak to you. When I'm talking, I ask for the same thing. You feel me? Which one of you FBA warriors want it, man? I'm talking about I got time. I'm a proud descendant of African slaves. I was born here in America, goddamn. My people raised the land here in America, but I do not agree with the ideology of FBA. You feel me? I think they are, as a matter of fact, my argument is FBA is white nationalism and blackface. You feel me? And my link argument to be able to make that is they pick up on shit like the great replacement theory that was manufactured by white supremacists saying the illegals is coming to replace us. How come y'all never got this beef towards the individuals that's giving the illegals, quote unquote, your job?
And the FBAs are so delusional that as soon as you don't agree with them and you're dark skinned as an African American, you're a tether. Now I'm cosplaying. Now I'm forcing my Chicago accent. Can you tell that to my ancestors that was enslaved in Mississippi? Or can you tell that to my great granddaddy who fled Tennessee with all of his siblings to Chicago because he unalived the white G-man that was trying to dangle them from trees? Or what about my grandparents that were Black Panthers? I'm not a tether, and I wasn't born on the continent of Africa. I just don't agree with your xenophobic bullshit. Because the same people calling African people tethers and calling them African booty scratchers called me the same shit in 3rd grade because of my skin tone and my facial features. I'm sorry my great-great-grandmother did not get SA'd by the slave masters, I guess. I'm sorry that when you look at me, you're reminded of your West African roots. But I can't help that. I'm still African American, and I still disagree.
Black Americans are beginning to use racism in the same way that Zionists use anti-Semitism, right? You have minority groups in the same way a minority group, the Jewish community, weaponize anti-Semitism to push supremacist talking points to the detriment of other people. You have the Black American community pushing supremacist talking points to the detriment of everybody who's not Black American. So I say this. I'm treating it like white supremacy, white supremacist talking points. I'm treating it like Zionism. Just because you're a minority doesn't mean that that shit's okay. And so I'm treating the FBAs and people who push that shit accordingly. If we're your enemy, you're my enemy. You're our enemy. And I encourage the immigrant, African, Caribbean, Palestinian, Arab, etc. community to do the same.
I think the FBA movement in 2025 is Zionism in the 1920s or Nazism in the 1930s.
You self-hating coons that put black people down on any occasion for the appeasement of white and POC followers make me fucking sick. And the worst part about you black leftists is majority of you aren't even foundational black Americans and you have the audacity to try and speak on FBA. But let's get back to your dumbass point in the foundational black American is Zionism or Nazism. Riddle me this. What land do we have? Riddle me this. What political party do we have? So you're comparing us to Zionism and Nazism when they had their own fucking countries, had their own fucking parties, and we're a marginalized group in America, and we only make up 13% of the population. How the fuck are we even gonna act on that for you to compare us to them? It's so fucking stupid that it's laughable. And the funny part about it is we know you are good at appeasing the conservatives because you admitted it yourself.
I hate when I'm shitting on liberals and conservatives think I'm one of them.
All I know is if I, as a black person, had conservative people agreeing with me, I would sit down and reevaluate my content and how I go about moving forward. But clearly you are laughing at it and accepting of it because deep down, those are the people you seek approval from.
I think the FBA movement in 2025 is Zionism in the 1920s or Nazism in the 1930s. I'm sure lots of people in the 1920s, in response,
Is the FBA in the room with us right now? Listen, I'm going to hold your hand when I tell you this. The FBA, wait for it, it's not a real thing. Look, if anything, the FBA is just as real as Hotep's Israeli Light, Nation of Islam, the Divestment Group, Diaspora War. I could keep going. These people do not have any sort of political power or influence on any community whatsoever. They only exist in the deepest part of the internet. They're just nothing more vocal minorities that are projecting their ignorance and skewed perspective into the void, seeking nothing but attention. That's all they are. And this is like no shade to this creator. I completely understand like where he's coming from in this video. Yes, we need to be very aware about rhetorics, talking points, propaganda, misinformation, and miseducation, because a lot of the times those things can lead into real life violences. And I completely understand how the internet can sometimes be a reflection of reality. But I also think we need to be considered that sometimes things that happens on the internet just stays on the internet. Also, I need y'all to understand when y'all make videos like this, by giving this attention, by having this overreaction to their beliefs, you're legitimizing what they're advocating for. Very similar to the alt-right pipeline and when fascists were trying to platform themselves. How they end up getting the support and able to influence people across the internet is not through reaction, it is through counter reaction. By you making this video, some random person on the internet is going to come across your video, here's the things you say, and be like, what is the FBA? And then he's going to search through it, and then next thing you know, that person is suddenly a supporter of the FBA. Not saying that you can't show concerns and have your criticism, but sometimes your overreaction can lead to giving them the exposure, the attention that they need in the first place. Like I said, I understand we need to be aware of rhetorics and talking points and propaganda and etc. These group of people are just nothing more than chronically online vocal minority. They're not a real thing, so you yourself shouldn't be treating them like they are a real thing.
I don't identify as foundational Black American. Neither does my African American family identify as foundational Black American. And I specifically don't do it for the exact same reasons that you stated. In the video that you commented on, I basically said that there were 3 degrees. I now realize that there's 4 degrees. The first degree, of course, being those that believe that they're indigenous to the United States, meaning they predate the indigenous tribes in the United States. And they were here before the people that we know as indigenous came from Siberia. And when white people came into the United States, they classified them as Black and the other people as indigenous. Now, if you look at historical records, we know that that's not true, because white Europeans, specifically British people, had a practice of considering anyone with dark skin Black. So when they came in contact with the indigenous people in the United States, they would often consider those Black people. The second degree are the ones that read that book, They Came Before Columbus. And the reason why that becomes important to understand why those types exist is because they also take things from documented history. There's a story about Mansa Musa's father, and it's also in the book, They Came Before Columbus, this story about Mansa Musa's father coming from Africa and encountering indigenous people in the America. Basically, the story is a fantasy belief of what might have happened if he actually made it to the Americas, because Mansa Musa's father basically took a voyage across the Atlantic, but he never returned. So they don't know if he actually made it to the Americas. So what a lot of foundational Black Americans that believe that they came before Columbus believe is they were the descendants of those that came over with Mansa Musa's father, and they ended up in the Americas, and they were here before Columbus. The third group is the one I said has a legitimate argument, because a lot of these foundational Black Americans actually do have indigenous ancestry, but that indigenous ancestry was erased with U.S. legislation. With the passage of the Indian Removal Act and the subsequent blood quantum laws that passed as a result of the signage of the Indian Removal Act, a lot of Black people that had indigenous ancestry that were living amongst the indigenous tribes were basically considered only Black. So any indigenous ancestry you had, regardless of if you were almost entirely indigenous or just part indigenous, was pretty much wiped out, and you were just considered
black. But the fourth and final group, and I didn't mention this in the original video, and the reason why I'm mentioning this one now is because a commenter pointed this out, and I feel it's necessary to talk about this group of foundational black Americans because I also feel they have a valid argument. The commenter pretty much said, I consider myself foundational black American. I know that I don't have any indigenous ancestry. I'm not descended from indigenous people. I'm not the original indigenous persons. I know that I am descended from African slaves that were brought over from Africa. But she said, and this is important, that African American culture for me began here in the United States. So when I talk about being a foundational black American, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about when I consider myself a foundational black American. And that to me is a valid argument because African American culture did begin here in the United States. The shaping of African American culture and every single custom and courtesy that we know as far as African American culture pertain started here in the United States. We had to create something out of nothing, right? So I agree with that person that that's a valid argument. When you consider yourself a foundational black American, your culture is significant and it is a standalone culture because African American is an ethnicity and has everything that needs to be considered an ethnic group. So yeah, that's one of the conversations that I'm trying to have with people, specifically pertaining to people in the African diaspora, that you can't just migrate or immigrate into African American culture and ethnicity. If you were not conditioned in African American culture and ethnicity, you are not African American. And that's fine. If you're not African American, you can be everything that you are. And we can all be black and proud and unified at the same time while simultaneously embracing each other's cultural contributions. And that oftentimes is not afforded to African Americans because a lot of people in the black diasporic communities, the African diasporic communities more specifically, don't believe that African Americans have culture. And that's always going to be problematic to me.
We need to talk about the rise in Black American nationalism and the Black American nationalist to white supremacist pipeline. Yes, white supremacist. So firstly, we've seen the Jay Versace tweet that's been resurfacing, and in response, I've seen like quite a few Black Americans make videos about that and say that you can always tell an African apart from an African American. Y'all are not like us, etc., etc. And before I even get too deep into that, I really want to ask you guys, what is the purpose of making that distinction? Why are you guys fighting so hard to make this distinction in 2025? Don't tell me that is reparations, because that's a really stupid answer. And just to speak to that point, Africans are very diverse looking people. Yes, there are people you can look at them and tell they're African, just like you can look at some people and tell, oh, okay, that's a Black American person. But if you go and get Africans who were born and raised in America or who moved to America at a very young age, you probably would not be able to tell. Most of you cannot, because people can't tell with me. It's literally not until you say something or until somebody sees your last name that they're like, oh. And that honestly kind of brings me to my second point of this whole thing of Africans are cosplaying Black Americans. I don't really think you guys understand how silly you sound when you say this at times, but I think it really does speak to sometimes how Black Americans, when it comes to this particular subject, some of y'all can be a little bit narrow-minded in your thinking, because what do you mean we're cosplaying? If you're born and raised in a country, you're going to have the mannerisms of people in that country. Especially if you're raised in a country like America, where things are typically just straight segregated by race. Like, let's be real. So it's like, you're going to have and adopt the mannerisms of the people, you know, in your community, which for a lot of people who are African but born in America, that's going to be Black American people. Like, hello. And thirdly, which I think is honestly probably the most egregious, is I saw a Black American woman on here who was trying to say that what? She said that Africans, Latinos, and immigrants are the new colonizers. That's quite literally the term that she used. She says that Black American people and she included white Americans. She said Black American people and white American people who've been here for hundreds of years, whose families have been here, who came over from Germany and Ireland, who built this country. They built this country, and now people are trying to come over here and force their customs on them, etc., etc. And I saw her in the comments literally liking comments saying white and Black Americans need to stick together. Like, do you see where it's not okay? Like, first of all, do you know what a colonizer really is? Like, let's not use that term lightly. Like, if you are claiming that your family has been here for all these hundreds of years and all this other stuff, girl, you should know the real history of colonization in this country, and you should know the real atrocity that it was, and not try to compare people who are literally coming over here peacefully to try to seek a better life for themselves, the new colonizers. That's very audacious and nasty. Immigration is not perfect. There's illegal immigrants who do terrible things, but that is not the overwhelming majority of people. So for you to be using that kind of rhetoric, especially as a black woman in America, I have to say pause. Like, come on. So again, I really just say all that to say, like, really, what is the purpose of this FBA movement? Why is this beneficial? And again, don't tell me reparations either. Because what, you guys think that by separating yourselves from the rest of the diaspora in America, that you're going to go back to the white man and say, hey, okay, it's us. We're the ones that deserve and you think that he's going to give it to you? You're crazy. This goes for all black people in the diaspora, period. If you're not ready to take your reparations by force, it's not happening, period. So again, just why are y'all doing this? What's the purpose? What's the agenda? I want to ask you guys, what is the purpose of making that distinction? Why are you guys fighting?
I think you're raising some good questions here. And your first question is, why does there even need to be a distinction between Black Americans and Africans, given that we're both the same race, navigating the same sort of racialization in the United States? And moreover, Africans who were born in America, who are not descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, do take on a lot of elements of American culture that make them almost indistinguishable from Black Americans who are descendants of the transatlantic slave. On the one hand, there is a difference between race and ethnicity, and Black Americans who are descendants of the Africans who were brought to America, to the United States during the transatlantic slave trade, have had an ethnogenesis here, not unlike other descendants of the transatlantic slave trade in different countries. And for me, making the distinction between race and ethnicity acknowledges that complex history. That being said, on the other hand, there is an FBA to white nationalist pipeline. And I think that comes from the tendency of minorities in America to attach themselves to white supremacist ideology as a defense mechanism. And as a side, I think this is why it's really important for people who immigrate to the Americas to understand the history of racialization in this country. And this is an attempt at assimilation into that culture. It's not going to work. And in the long run, it won't work, but it will work for some time as FBAs become mouthpieces for white supremacy culture in the United States. And it will continue to work until FBAs are no longer useful to that project. And I think it's this desire to assimilate for perceived protection that encourages people to distance themselves from the African diaspora and be FBA. I myself am a Pan-Africanist, but I think that many people in the Black community have become disillusioned by Pan-Africanism because it isn't doing anything for them. And no different from anyone else, when faced with the prospect of scarcity, people become very tribal. It's the same mentality that's in the white Latino community as they're watching brown and Black and indigenous Latinos being deported. It's the same mentality in the Jewish community right now with people who are willing to work with white supremacists if they think that it will lead to their protection. And as you pointed out, that's not a strong long-term strategy. People just generally have a hard time with a long-term communal mindset. It's much easier to think about politics in a short-term individual sense. Sometimes people can do it in a short-term communal sense. And in the United States, white supremacy always guarantees personhood, so it would make sense to align yourself with that if that's what you're concerned about. It's gotten to the extent that a lot of these FBA people do not see themselves as African to even relate themselves to the diaspora. And a lot of their reasoning is rooted in phrenology, eugenics, and historical revisionism. If you're already co-signing white supremacist ideology, you're probably more likely to collaborate with them.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about the rise of like the FBA movement slash the anti-black immigrant sentiment that I've seen lately on social media. Now I'm not too sure where this came from, but me personally, I first encountered this maybe back in like 2023, I believe, on Twitter. So it was a Twitter space, and this Twitter space was about how immigrants are essentially affecting Black Americans and how they are maybe taking away certain opportunities from Black Americans. This wasn't focused on any particular group of immigrants, but then later on in the space, it did shift to Black immigrants in particular and how they may be taking things away from Black Americans. And I would also like to add, while this Twitter space was going on, like there were Africans and Black Americans literally yelling slurs at one another through the phone. There were even white conservatives that literally came up there as well. Even the fresh and fit guy came up there as well. Like, I'm not too sure. Yes, the fresh and fit guy, of course, he was on the side of the Africans. You know, he's East African. I don't remember what the conservative guy was doing, but girl, they were in there and it was very, very messy. And there was a huge fallout from this space. And mind you guys, this was a space that went on for over 24 hours. So this is from like where I noticed a lot of this propaganda started to rise was from that day. Because if you were there, you would know that like Tariq Nasheed came in there. There was a lot going on. A lot of people came in there that day. And so from there, I started seeing a lot more Black American people referring to themselves as foundational Black American. And so I noticed that a lot of them were trying to distance themselves from Africa and talk about how, you know, they were already here and stuff like that. They were also native to the land of America, things of that nature. Which, mind you, that claim is getting so bad, I'm starting to see Native Americans have to come out and, like, refute that claim and say, like, no, girl, like, respectfully, we are the original natives. But I noticed this very strong push to separate and create a distinction between Black Americans who are descendants from slavery versus, you know, everybody else. Which I absolutely agree with the fact that we are very different, but we also, of course, have a lot of similarities, right? But I don't necessarily think making that distinction in a certain context is productive. Like making that distinction in a conversation about the betterment and the advancement of any Black people, period, regardless of where they're from in the diaspora, that's not a useful conversation because at the end of the day, we all have the same enemy. So it's like, what are we making that distinction for? Why are we making this separation? Again, all of it just feels very anti-African, and it just feels like, again, propaganda for more division, for more divide and conquer. So please, let's all respect one another. We all have our own culture, Black American people included, okay? And we all descend from the same place. All love. That's it.
This is all I got from this video. You know, one thing I do not want to hear is seeing my own people go back and forth. That is something that I don't want to hear, and I don't want to say it. Because you all remember that I came here was the last week to ask you people for more clarification on this, right? I got so many emails. Even till this very moment, I am still getting emails pertaining FBAs and all that. But see, one thing I want to tell us is that I just do not understand some people saying we are Indians, we are African American, we are Black, we are I don't know, but I think whether whatever we identify as, or you know, we can have common goals, right? I might be blue, you might be green, you might be, you know, dark or brown, but we can always have common goal. What do I mean by common goal? We can work together. We don't have to put one another down. We don't have to be mean to one another. You know, you don't have to. I don't know how somebody will say, I am FBA, and you look at African American and you are telling African American, you are not like me. Right? It doesn't make any sense. Or African American is telling this person, you are, or maybe telling, you are not like me. Like, who are you like? Or who am I like? For me, I feel it doesn't make any sense. Why? because literally we are all the same and we have one oppressor. And the best thing we can do as human beings, as we are right now, is to work hand in hand with one another to get rid of those people that do not want you to prosper. It kind of sucks seeing maybe FBA telling someone, I mean, like having this coming with this talking point of his or her oppressor, or seeing maybe an African person having that also mentality, or that is not what I wish for us. And if you know me very well, you definitely will know how I am working so hard to make sure that all of us we have one common goal, because that one common goal is the only thing every one of us should have. I don't want to be saying you are this, you are not this, you are okay. If you say this is what you are, it's fine. If I say I am African, it's okay. If you say you're African, that is beautiful. But in all, are we not the same? Are we not the same? The truth is that if anybody I am a cop right now, and I am seeing three persons that look so much alike. I am a white cop, right? I am a cop, whether African, black, or anything, because if I see you, we all look alike. I might not be able to say if this is FBA or if this is African American or this person is who, except for some people that when you look at them, you will know like this is where you are from. Even at that, like there are like Ethiopians, Eritreans, Somalians. There are some people when you look at them, you can say, oh, that is African, that is Somalian. Because some of them do not even believe that they are even black. You go what I'm saying, But aside from that, I mean, we can do better. We can do better. The other sister that was trying to come so hard at black, which one is black people? Which one is black people saying that you are in court? What do you mean by black people? Who are you? Oh no, I do not understand all this, because at this point in time, for me, it is not making sense. It is not making sense. We can respect one another, be kind to one another. We don't have to wake up every day to start asking, I am Indian, I am indigenous to the land, you are African American. Okay, if you are indigenous to the land, it's beautiful. If you're African American, that is wonderful. But we have to work hand in hand. Bye for now.